Where it says are we good? Just have a little feedback. Good evening, everyone. Now it's 7 o'clock on October 13th, 2020. I'd like to call to order the City of Laconia City Council meeting for this evening. This evening, City Hall is actually Laconia High School, Culinary Arts Center. The public has access to listen to and participate. Good evening, everyone. Now 7 o'clock on October 13th, 2020. I'd like to call to order the City of Laconia City Council meeting. I'd ask the city clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilor Cheney.
Here.
Councilor Susie.
Here.
Councilor Lippman.
Present.
Councilor Haynes.
Here.
Councilor Hamel.
Present.
Councilor Felch.
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Present. Thank you. Moving along on our agenda to number 7, acceptance of minutes. I'd ask the city clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilor Cheney.
Here.
Councilor Susie.
Here.
Councilor Lippman.
Present.
Councilor Haynes.
Here.
Councilor Hamel.
Present.
Councilor Felch.
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Present. or corrections submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. Moving on to number 8, consent and action items. Per resolution 2019-24, resolution relative to the acceptance and expenditure of unanticipated funds made available during the fiscal year per RSA 31:95-B in an amount less than $10,000. The city has been awarded $7,761 by the Center for Tech and Civic Life Grant. There's no fiscal impact on the city, and these are, hopefully people have taken, if you have questions, there's a document attached. This was submitted by the city in anticipation of expenses associated with conducting our elections during the pandemic, and a request was put in for the grant, and we were fortunate enough to receive this money. So I'd be looking for a motion to move the acceptance of the Center for Tech and Civic Life Grant in an amount of $7,761 to be used for the upcoming elections. Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Hamel. Further discussion. Councilor Hamel.
Just a quick question on number 7. It's requesting a brief report explaining the expenditures of the fund. Cheryl will be doing that. We'll be doing that.
Cheryl will work with the finance director, Glenn Smith, and will be for things like additional mailings, additional staffing, PPE, those types of things.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, I'd ask to call vote right now. And all those in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, 6 votes in the affirmative, this motion passes. And thank you very much, both Cheryl and Scott, for pursuing that grant and securing it. Moving along to number 9 on our calendar is the citizens' comments for matters not on the agenda. Now would be the appropriate time if citizens are listening in or with us tonight in the audience who would like to speak or make a comment for matters not on the agenda.
No hands are raised, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving along to number 10 for interviews. And first up is Dean Hanson, the second, seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Conservation Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of 2023. Welcome, Mr. Hanson. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and let us know why you're interested in a reappointment.
I'm Dean Hanson. I live on Layton Avenue North in Laconia. And I have been on the Conservation Commission for several years, and I enjoy working with the applicants that come in that need permits or approvals that we can review and pass on to the planning board for their consideration. We watch over and help take care of the natural resources of the city, and work with whatever other agencies in the city, departments that need our assistance.
Thanks, Mr. Hanson, and I neglected to say that you're currently a regular member of the Conservation Commission. Your term expired at the end of August 2020, and you're requesting reappointment to a 3-year term expiring at the end of 2023. There is one vacant regular position available in the Conservation Commission. Interviews for individuals applying for appointment and reappointment to various boards and commissions will be held at this meeting. Appointments will be made at the Council's October 26, 2020 meeting. Thank you very much. Looking to councilors, any questions for Mr. Hanson? Seeing none, thank you for, I'm sorry. Councilor Hamel.
Thank you, Dean, for coming back in and reapplying. The Conservation Commission, do they have any say over the property that goes into conservation on the repair of buildings that might be on that property?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
If I can interject just one moment right now, my apologies, Councilor Hamel. When reviewing the audio from the last council meeting, the audio was a little subdued from what I understand, so if we can speak up a little higher,
Okay,
so
sure.
the audio can pick it up, as well as the folks in the back had expressed some
Okay. The Conservation Commission, do they have authority on making sure repairs to buildings that are on conservation land gets done?
I don't think we have any authority to do that. It would be, if we needed repairs, we would make recommendations to the planning department, and then they would pass it.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, a land that goes into conservation, if there's a barn on it, and I'm thinking of White Oaks Road,
Okay.
that's in conservation, and there's a barn on it that's
There's a
hasn't been
conservation
looked at for quite a while.
Right.
I believe the barn still belongs to the person, is that correct? Or no?
I think that it does belong to the new owners, and those new owners took over maybe 3 or 4 months ago.
Oh, okay. So are they going to address that barn, or you don't know?
When we walked the conservation easement with them back in, time goes by too fast, I think it was August, they had looked at different repairs that had to be done, and the new owners are young, so they have a lot of energy, and I think that they want to use that barn for storage of their equipment, so I think that they will make those repairs.
Is that land going to stay in conservation?
The land is going to stay in conservation easement, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hamel. Councilor Cheney.
I'm suddenly at a bit of a loss. A conservation easement, as I understood it, is for the land.
Right.
The buildings are a separate issue, aren't they?
In this particular case, what they have done is they have carved out that portion that includes the house and the barn. So that's.
So that would not be covered
Right.
in any fashion by the city.
I've walked all of the conservation easements that the city has, and I don't recall any buildings on any of those easements. There are no structures.
Okay. I thought that barn was on property. That's why they put it there.
Okay, but I just don't think buildings are covered. I went through the process, as you may recall,
Right.
And I, like them, was prepared to carve out 9 acres that would not be in the conservation easement. So I'm aware that land is put in, but I was not aware of any buildings that were accepted.
Councilor Susie.
Mr. Haynes, I have one question. It says you serve on other conservation-oriented boards.
I do.
Which other ones are you on?
I'm on the Winnisquam Watershed Network, the Belknap County Conservation District, and I am also, I think, up for reappointment for the Lakes Region Planning Commission.
Thank you. Must keep you very busy. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Hamel.
Is there, in the Conservation Commission, is there now a list of procedures that when a property is bought, that you will be going down these procedures to make sure all the checks are done?
Yes, there is. Yes.
Okay. So is this something new, or is this something?
It is something that we have recently been updating. We've been doing it over the last few months, and I think we have a pretty big checklist now.
Okay, so that everything will happen the way it's supposed to.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Hamel. Any further questions from councilors for Mr. Hanson? Councilor Susie.
This is Bob, probably as you know it better. Is there accountability on these subjects so that whoever has the conservation or takes it over has to abide by whatever the guidelines are?
Yes. Yeah, we have an agreement with the landowner, and The one on White Oaks Road, the original agreement was with Bob Harrington
Right.
and his wife. And that same agreement applies to the new owners. So we do have an agreement with individual owners who want to put a conservation easement on their property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Seeing no further questions, thank you for your willingness to serve and come here tonight to interview. You might as well not go very far because we're going to move right along to you again.
Okay.
So moving along to 10B, we have Dean Hanson seeking reappointment as a regular, hold on. Dean Hanson seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Lakes Region Planning Commission to a 4-year term expiring at the end of June 2024. Mr. Hanson is currently a regular member of the Lakes Region Planning Commission, having served on the commission representing the city of Laconia for over 5 years. His term expired at the end of June 2019, and he is requesting reappointment to a 4-year term expiring at the end of June 2024. So if you have no reason to reintroduce yourself, but let us know why you're seeking a reappointment to the Lakes Region Planning Commission.
The commission has an executive board. I'm on that board, and the value of being on that board is that the other municipalities that are part of the commission, of which there are 29 other municipalities, participate, and they bring different ideas to the executive board and to the commission in general. And I find those ideas to be interesting, and I look for ways to take their ideas and apply them to the city, see if we can benefit from any homework that they have done that might help us.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Are there any questions from the council this evening? Seeing none, again, thank you for your willingness to come here this evening to interview and your willingness to serve. Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving along to 10C. This would be Bradley Fitzgerald seeking appointment as a regular general public member of the Building Code Board of Appeals to a 5-year term expiring at the end of March 2025.
Mr. Mayor,
Terrific. He's on Zoom. We've brought with you. The Building Code Board of Appeals consists of 5 members, 3 of which must meet specific criteria as a registered engineer, registered electrician, registered architect, registered plumber, and a registered firematic. Currently, the engineer, electrician, and architect positions are filled with individuals registered in those fields, allowing the other 2 positions to be filled by members of the general public. I understand Mr. Fitzgerald has joined us via Zoom. And welcome. If you're there, Brad, and you can introduce yourself and let us know.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Good evening.
Terrific.
Bob, we don't need the headphones.
If you could let us know why you'd like to be appointed to the Building Code of Appeals, that would be just terrific.
Yeah, Brad. I'm Brad Fitzgerald. Live on Old North Main Street. I've been on several boards in the city in the past, and just saw this one come up in the newspaper about looking to fulfill a position in the code enforcement or code review board. Seeing as I've been a plumbing and heating contractor in town for over 35 years, I'm familiar with that. Familiar with those codes. I have a master plumber's license, gas fitter's license, refrigeration license, familiar with installation of residential 1 and 2 family fire sprinklers. So I could bring my expertise and my knowledge to that board, as it were.
Thanks very much, Brad, for your application and your willingness to serve. I'll look to the council right now for any questions for Mr. Fitzgerald. Councilor Lippman.
I appreciate you, Brad, coming forward. For those who don't remember, you were also the city councilor at one point, and I think you are way qualified to take this position up. Appreciate you coming forward and contributing to the city again.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Councilor Littman just said. I've known Brad for a long time, and his expertise will be valuable on this board. But you also forgot to say something else that you're qualified in, and that's coffee making, Brad, and roasting that.
Yeah, I didn't think that pertained to this particular board, but yeah, we can roast some coffee.
Well, you never know. But thanks again for coming forward.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Brad? Seeing none, Brad, as you know, will interview this week, and appointments will be made at council's next meeting, October 26th. So again, thanks for your service to the city and your willingness to continue your service. Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving along to 10G. We have Michael Fogerty. You can see in the agenda, it's, I think, misspelled. It's Fogarty, who is seeking appointment as a regular member of the trustees of the trust funds to fill the term of John Nivus, expiring at the end of March 2023. Mr. Fogarty is requesting appointment to fill the term of John Nivus, who recently passed. This is a 3-member board, and the 2 current trustees are hopeful that the vacancy can be filled as soon as possible, ideally before the next trustees meeting, which is scheduled for October 19th. So the council's typical procedure is to interview candidates for the board and commissions at the first meeting of the month and appoint at the second meeting. If the council wishes to suspend their rules, our rules, or rules of procedure, and both interview and appoint Mr. Fogarty at this evening's meeting, a motion is provided below. If not, Mr. Fogarty's appointment would be considered at the council's October 26th meeting. Mr. Fogarty's application is attached to our packet this evening, so welcome, Mike. And if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and why you'd like to serve as trustee of the trust.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. My name is Mike Fogarty. I live on Davidson Drive in Laconia. I've been a resident of Laconia or Guilford since I was a kid. And when I heard about the city trust and the position, the open position for trustee, I felt it was a position that I'm suited for by experience, by my training and background, and by the work I've been doing for the last 29 years right here in Laconia. As a financial advisor, I serve as a fiduciary to all of my clients. In that capacity, I'm very aware of the responsibilities that we have for taking care, proper care, and being cautious and applying the proper standards to the role of overseeing the funds in the trust. And I felt it was something that I was suited for, so I'd be very happy to serve.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate your willingness to come here and interview, as well as your desire to serve. So I look to the councilors and see if there are any questions of Mr. Fogarty. Councilor Littman.
Mike, thank you. Can you maybe share a little bit about kind of what the difference would be between your employment role and your role as a trustee, and how you see that?
Well, in many ways, in many ways, there's not a difference. The main difference is that I'm not serving as an advisor to either a client or a retirement plan sponsor. I have a responsibility to the trust, to understanding the purposes of the funds that are invested, and making sure that the rules are followed, making sure that any investment advisors that are hired are doing the job that they're supposed to be doing, the funds are properly custodied and accounted for, and that the trust that's placed in the trustees is upheld. It's not a case of doing it. Really, I think the primary difference is I'm not doing it as part of my career. I'm doing it as a service to the city, and to me that's the biggest difference.
You're not actually making the investment choices itself. correct? You're overseeing the people who are making that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, actually, that's, I think that's one of the areas that, you know, I have a depth of understanding there. I think I understand the language, and if someone was reviewing what the strategies of the fund were, what the approaches were, I would understand what they're saying. I've served in this capacity before to a degree as a member of the Holy Trinity Endowment Board. Again, I think it's something that I'm suited for.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, again, thank you, Mike, and if you'd like to stick around, you've got a few minutes. This may go a little quicker this evening if the council decides that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving along to number 10E, we have Patrick Wood, who's seeking appointment as a regular member of the trustees of the trust fund to fill the term of John Nivas, expiring at the end of March 2023. Mr. Wood is requesting the appointment to fill the term because Mr. Nivas, as we said earlier, passed away. Similarly, if the council decides we may be able to suspend the rules this evening, and instead of waiting until October 26th to make the appointment, you could do so this evening. And that way we have a trustee seated for the next meeting, which is October 19th, 2020, next meeting of the trustees of the trust funds. So welcome, Patrick, and perhaps police.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you for the opportunity. I did not seek this position because of some intent to make myself better known in any way. I was asked to put my name in. I did not realize that Mr. Fogerty also expressed an interest in it. I've known Mr. Fogerty for a number of years. He's a very capable, competent person. He would do a wonderful job as a trustee. And if the decision is to go with him, I would know for sure that the city would be in good hands with Mr. Fogerty. I've been a practicing attorney in the city for a little over 45 years. I retired at the end of last year. I am now inactive, retired from the Bar Association and the Supreme Court. I'm enjoying my retirement immensely. It is really a wonderful experience, and I highly recommend it if you haven't gotten there yet. I have, over the years, dealt with a number of people in their trust matters. I've worked with local banks and their trust departments in different matters. I'm currently serving as trustee for a couple of situations. Similar to Mr. Fogerty, at the church that I belong to, I served as a trustee in which we reviewed and monitored the financial assets of the church. The key thing in being any trustee is recognizing the fiduciary obligation that you have to not only learn what you're supposed to be dealing with and understand it, but also knowing that these funds are on deposit for the benefit of somebody else. And as a fiduciary, you have that primary obligation to that other person. And in this case, it's the city of Laconia and all of its citizens. I know that either Mike or I take that responsibility very seriously. And so when you make your decision on who should be the trustee, feel confident that I think either one of us would understand how important it is to do our best for the benefit of the city. So thanks again for considering me.
Thanks, Patrick. As always, your willingness to serve the community and come out this evening and interview is greatly appreciated. I look to a fellow, yes.
There is one other thing I should say. I am on the Housing Authority now. I'm a commissioner of the Housing Authority, and I enjoy doing that very much. And I would hope that this would not be a conflict that I would have to. Okay, so.
It doesn't seem to be, but yeah, since you're retired, we'll look for ways to continue to fill your plate so you don't have any downtime at all, okay?
Jane is doing a good job of that as well.
No doubt. And looking to the councilors, any questions for Patrick Wood? Seeing none, again, thank you and very much appreciate it. What's the process you would suggest here? Would this go to unfinished business tonight, or would this be something that would?
It could be done now, or it could go later in the agenda, whatever the council desires.
So if the council so desires, Councilor Hammond.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that the council suspends council rules for the election of the trustees of the trust for this evening. I'll make that motion.
A second.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Susie. Further discussion? Councilor Littman.
I just, when Councilor Susie asked me a question, I'd just like to see if Glenn or the manager can just, what is our approximate balance that's under management by trustees of the trust?
I can say it's, between all the different trusts together, upwards of $1 million.
Thank you.
And just for one other point, the trustees meet quarterly, so I think that's, I know that's the reason why the request is, because if the trustee didn't make this meeting, then it would be already all the way till January for the next trustee meeting.
And I want to express, I appreciate both gentlemen coming forward, particularly Patrick's humbleness in terms of that ceding to Mike in terms of having extra experience in this particular part.
Any further discussion? So the motion to suspend the rules is on the floor right now. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of suspending the rules, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? None. 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. So the rules at this moment are suspended. So, Councilor Cheney.
I'd like to move the appointment of Mr. Fogerty to the trustee of the trust fund.
Councilor Cheney moves Michael Fogerty. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Littman. Any further discussion on the advancement of Michael Fogerty? Seeing none, I'd call the vote right now. Is this a roll call or? So used to calling roll call. So I call the vote right now. All those in favor of Michael Fogerty, please raise your hands. Opposed? 6 votes in the affirmative. Michael Fogerty is appointed trustee of the trust funds for a term expiring at the end of March 2023. Councilor Chief.
I'd just like to make the comment that for me, and I suspect the 5 other councilors, this is not a statement of lack of support for Mr. Wood. We all know he's a valued member of our community, and I appreciate him being here. I just thought that Mr. Fogerty deserved an opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Councilor Cheney. Well, I don't think any one of us here thinks that Patrick Wood is off the hook with something else that you can find for him, believe me. Congratulations, Mike. Thank you. And Patrick, thank you again. We're a very fortunate community of both candidates. So the rules are now back in. We've got a vote to bring them to.
Just continue.
We're just going to move right along. Terrific. Thank you very much, councilors. Moving along to 10F. We have Joseph Driscoll III, seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Weirs TIF District Advisory Board to a 3-year term expiring at the end of June 2023. Mr. Driscoll is currently a regular member of the Weirs TIF District Advisory Board. His term expired at the end of June 2020, and he is requesting reappointment to a 3-year term expiring at the end of June 2023. There are no vacancies on the board. Welcome, Mr. Driscoll. Driscoll, it's nice to see you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Introduce yourself and let us know why you'd like to be reappointed.
Okay, Joe Driscoll. I live at 75 Tower Street in the Weirs. And first of all, thanks for being live. I think it's really great, and it's great. No substitute for FaceTime. Anyway, the TIF Advisory District for the Weirs has been very successful down there, and it's just been very gratifying to be part of it. This goes back to after the legislation was approved and our local group and local community got together to form our wish list and proceeded through to form a TIF district. Fortunately, I guess for me, it was very gratifying. I'm also a member of the Board of Water Commissioners, and a few years ago, we needed to replace a pipe in the weirs, and it goes right down Lakeside Avenue, you know, as you all know. And it was such a pleasure to be involved in this. The original project would have been bare bones. The pipe would have come out or have been relayed, everything covered up. Instead, because of not just the TIF district, but because of outstanding public employees like our city manager, between our water superintendent, our director of public works at the time, Paul Moynihan, and our current one, Wes, everybody said, how can we make this better? How can we take this situation? There's going to be a big hole. What else can go in there? How can we improve this community? And TIF was the perfect answer to it. Without this type of funding mechanism, none of that would have taken place. And Lakeside Avenue looks beautiful as a result. There's still very much work to be done down there as well, though. I guess our current initiative would mostly be focused on the beach and its vitality and well-being. So there's a lot of work to do, and it's exciting work, and it's great to be involved in it.
Joe, thanks very much for your willingness to always step up and serve, and I can speak for my time that I spent on the Water Commission with you. Your work is excellent, and I enjoyed serving with you. I can also say the work that's been done on the weirs long before I joined the city council or became mayor, it was extraordinary work that was going on down there. Reinvesting in the community was really something, and it's come a long way. And credit goes to all of you who've dug in and done the work. So thank you.
It really was. It was remarkable to see how our city offices work, but also our private sector, Busby and so forth, amazing. And on time.
Thank you. Any questions from councilors of Mr. Driscoll? Trying to sneak away now. Seeing none, thank you very much once again. And appointments to this will be made at October 26th meeting of the city council.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Moving along to 10G, Michael Sweet seeking appointment as a regular member of the Heritage Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2023. Mr. Sweet is currently an alternate member of the Heritage Commission. There is one vacant regular member position on the commission. Mr. Sweet has requested appointment to that position and has offered to take over the position of chair. If Mr. Sweet is appointed as a regular member, there would then be 2 vacant alternate positions and no vacant regular member positions on the commission. As I said, there is no current chair of the Heritage Commission. The commission is hopeful that Mr. Sweet can be appointed as a regular member, which will enable him to then take over his position of chair before their next meeting, which is scheduled for October 14th. If the council wishes to suspend the rules of procedure and both interview and appoint Mr. Sweet at this evening's meeting, a motion is provided below. If not, Mr. Sweet's appointment would be considered at the next meeting, October 26th. So welcome, if you could introduce yourself to everyone and let us know a little bit why you're seeking appointment as a regular member.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I've been on the commission for 3 years now, and it's been a great experience. I've learned a lot about my city. I've been here for 7 years, and I've had great teachers, and I want to continue to do it. And I'm as passionate about it as any of my colleagues, fellow members on the council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sweet. Thank you for your service as an alternate member. And I appreciate you coming out for the interview this evening as
always a
well.
pleasure.
And the work that you've already done. Looking to the council right now for any questions of Mr. Sweet. Councilor Haynes.
It's not a question, but being the liaison, I've had an opportunity to work with Mike, and I would highly recommend to my fellow councilors that he be appointed.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? So seeing none, we do have the ability to suspend the rules if someone would like to make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Haynes, seconded by Councilor Hamel. So the proposed motion, we're now looking for a motion to move to appoint Michael Sweet as a regular member of the Heritage Commission.
I think you need to vote.
Oh, right, suspend the rules. I was just going to roll over that. So we have a second. Any further discussion on suspending the rules? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. If you're in favor, raise your hand, say aye. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. So now we're looking for a motion to move to appoint Michael Sweet as a regular member of the Heritage Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2023. So made by Councilor Haynes, seconded by Councilor Felch. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd call the vote. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 10H. Michael Della Vecchia, seeking reappointment as an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment to a 3-year term expiring at the end of August 2023. Mr. Della Vecchia is currently an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment whose term expired at the end of August 2020. He is requesting reappointment to a 3-year term expiring at the end of August 2023. In addition to Mr. Della Vecchia's position, there are 4 vacant alternate positions and 1 vacant regular member position available on the board. As you know, Mr. Della Vecchia, interviews will be tonight and appointment at the October 26th meeting. So welcome, nice to have you. If you could introduce yourself, certainly for the record, let us know why you're seeking reappointment.
Thank you, Mayor Humber. I've been alternate member for 3 years, and it's been a learning experience. Basically, a lot of heartfelt decisions had to be made. You know, when you deny somebody an adjustment or something, and you really want to help them, but the rules say you can't. And just like to be a regular member now.
Thank you very much for your willingness to serve and coming out.
I'm sorry. So an email did go out to all of you today saying that Mr. Della Vecchia had contacted my office, and now that there is a full seat, not an alternate seat available. So even though he put his application in originally to be reappointed as the alternate, he is seeking the position of the 1 regular member seat that is vacant at this time. So just want to be clear about that.
Thank you, Scott.
So you're currently seeking a full member, not the alternate member, so straight the alternate. Terrific. Again, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Della Vecchia this evening from the council? Seeing none, did you have something? Yeah, Councilor.
Michael, I know you play an important role in the community and in healthcare or have, in terms of your ability to make the meetings, has that been an issue at all for you?
Occasionally I'll miss a meeting, but I've been able to have a quorum more than I have missed, because there's been several members having trouble getting to the meeting. So I make the quorum more than I have ever missed the meeting.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, again, thank you for coming this evening and your willingness to serve.
Thank you, councilors, Mr. Mayor.
Moving on to 10I, Kevin Goulet seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Highway Safety Commission to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2023. Goulet is currently a regular member of the Highway Safety Commission. His term expired at the end of March 2020, and he is requesting reappointment to a 3-year term expiring at the end of March 2023. There are currently no vacancies on the commission. Welcome, Mr. Goulet. I know you're joining us by Zoom, so let us know if you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear.
Welcome. Let us know about why you're seeking reappointment as a regular member of the Highway Safety Commission.
Okay. My name's Kim Collette. Live on Archer Street in Laconia. I've been a resident for about 36 years and as a public servant for over 35 years. It's difficult to just step away from being involved in some manner with public service. And I found that the Highway Safety Commission included a few of the key areas that I had during my professional employment. And I've enjoyed working with the other members of the commission, and primarily we review applications that come in to the police department, sometimes the fire department, and with the membership that constitutes that board and some of the issues that we are asked to provide guidance on. I've enjoyed that time. It hasn't been too much of a pressure in terms of attending meetings. I think the last meeting was about 7 months ago. So it's a group that does not meet frequently. It possibly could do more, but in terms of being able to provide additional assistance to the public and to make improvements to the city of Laconia where needed in regards to the transportation network and to highway safety, that's an area in which I'm very interested and willing to volunteer my time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your willingness to interview this evening. Any questions from the council?
Just we're lucky to have Kim's involvement and historical perspective of working on the Lakes Region Planning Commission and leading that commission. So thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Kim, I do want to just raise one thing, and I appreciate the fact when you answer the question, what is the reason you've applied for this particular board or commission? And you replied interest in maintaining and improving transportation safety for all modes of travel within and adjacent to the city, including walking and bicycling, both which I do throughout the city, and I appreciate your focus on that. I think it's part of our vibrant community to have safe roads for both of those modes of transportation. So thank you.
I totally agree with you, Mayor.
So seeing no further questions, again, thank you, and we will make an appointment on the October 26, 2020 meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, moving along to number 13 on our agenda here, which is public hearings. 13A, we have a public hearing for ordinance 2020-201-15, streets and sidewalks, and ordinance 2020-201-16, excavation. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the October 1st, 2020 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and posted at Laconia City Hall, Laconia Public Library, Community Center, and SAU. Public Works estimates that the city will collect approximately $50,000 in charges annually that can be used to maintain and repair city's roads. Action on this item will be taken up under unfinished business. This report was submitted by Wes Anderson, Director of Public Works. So I'd like to open the public meeting at 7:48. And ask for any input that anyone may have, including council.
Nobody listening by Zoom is raising their hands, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll close the public hearing at 7:49 p.m. Moving on to the mayor's report, this will be fairly brief. Just an update on a couple of work groups that we have that I've been organizing. The first and foremost is our business roundtable in the city. We had our first meeting last week at the Belknap Mill. First thing in the morning, we had I believe eight people attend from throughout the business community, and I think it was overall a very good discussion. It lasted about an hour. There seems to be a desire within the business community in the city of Laconia to continue and develop this committee and to work on issues that are important to our business community. So I am happy to
We have not scheduled a second meeting. I wanted to follow up individually, and I tend to follow up individually with everyone who attended to get a little more feedback on specifically what they might be looking for and what issues we can work on here in the city. So I anticipate within the next 30 days or so, 30 to 45 days, we'll probably have a second in-person meeting, and I will let the council know when we're having it, and hopefully it fits into your schedules, as we have a 1-hour meeting with the business community talking about various issues. So I will keep you posted, but it has been kicked off, and I think it went quite well. Secondly, the issue of homelessness, which we've talked about a fair amount throughout the city, and the task force, I think, sent an invitation out to about 30 individuals thereabouts who were expressed some interest in joining the Laconia Task Force on homelessness. We got a positive response from about 25 people representing both the private and the public sector. We've been having some organizational meetings among a group of people who will lead our first meeting, which right now is scheduled for Monday, the 19th. We had it scheduled from 5 to 6:30, I believe, but we may run into a conflict at City Hall. We may have to reschedule that from 4:30 to 6 in order to allow the ZBA to use City Hall at 6:30 that evening. So we do have a task force. I will, when that date is, the date will remain the same. The time may be adjusted, and I'll send out certainly ask Scott to let all the council know as well. So you can certainly attend and participate, but I think it will hopefully lead to a healthy discussion about what's going on in the city in regards to homelessness and what we in the city perhaps see ourselves, how we see ourselves responding to this. I don't know if I use the word crisis necessarily, but certainly to a growing issue within our city that I think we should find a way to address this and really step up to the challenges as a city and see what we can do about this. So those are the only two things that I'd like to mention this evening. I'm happy to move right along now to committee reports. Do we have any committee reports this evening? Councilor Littman.
The Finance Committee met this evening to review the investment policy and the audit internal control policies, and we'll be coming to you shortly with some recommendations on both those items.
Thank you, Councilor Littman. Seeing no other requests to speak, I'll move on to liaison reports. Looking to councilors for liaison reports this evening. Councilor Hammond.
Thank you. Just a quick update on the Colonial. Things are still progressing very well. They are now working on the main area for the seating. They have to redo the main floor because the steepness of the old concrete is too much. So they're going to be layering that with plywood and making that proper. Also, I want to give a big thank you to Scott Myers, City Manager, for helping us out through some intricate things that needed to be done. One of them was, since the building is probably going to end up on the National Historic List, everything that's done to that building, windows especially, is what we were dealing with at this point, has to go through the New Hampshire Historical Society, and then that all gets shipped down to DC to the National Parks Historical, and has to be approved by them. And this involves a 1/16 of an inch of trim on one side and all this kind of stuff. But it was a process that was taking a long time. So Scott had some contacts down in DC, and he made those, and we have the approval. So now all the design work that has been done is going to Anderson Windows to be manufactured, but it's still like an 8-week delay time. So it was a long process, and I want to thank Scott for helping us out with that. And Scott also helped us out with another problem we had, and that was with, not the problem with Eversource, but it was a problem with getting the lease behind the bank, Citizens Bank, I think it is, behind there, correct?
Yeah, the Citizens doesn't own it, so.
Correct. It's another person that owns that property. But we had a pretty hard time getting the lease signed, and Scott tackled that, and the lease is all signed for that, so Eversource has already put the new transformer. But as I said, I believe at the last meeting, they found several wires heading somewhere that they don't know where they go. So they're trying to figure that out, and probably some businesses who may not have power one night or something. When they shut stuff down, might be a surprise to them. But we've gotten through some big steps here, some big hurdles, and a lot of it's thank you to Scott. And the whole project is going on really well now. The tin ceilings are up on the Canal Street side, and they look amazing. The bathrooms are going in, fixtures, and the usual electrical, plumbing, all that kind of stuff is going full bore. So it's looking pretty good. Thank you. It's an exciting project to be on.
Thank you, Councilor Hamel, thanks. I always look forward to your update, quite frankly, so this is great. Any other liaison reports this evening? Seeing none, moving on to number 18. This is the opportunity for citizens, a citizen's request to comment on current agenda items. Anything on tonight's agenda that the public would like to speak about, now would be the appropriate time. Thank you. Moving along to number 19, city manager's report. Turn it over to Scott Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So included in your agenda packet for this evening, you have the financial and operational trends report. At the very top of the report is our building permit report and new construction value, net gain in construction value, because sometimes there's some demolition that we take away from it. So you can see current year and then some of the assessing year we're speaking about. So April 1st to March 31st is how all communities in the state track assessing numbers. We are at $18 million, which is actually a little bit ahead of our number for the entire previous year. And to put it in a little perspective, a year ago at this time, we were about $10 million of value. We're at 18 million right now. I will point out that that does not include either the Barton's development or the proposed Lakeport development in the number. It's a lot of single family homes in a lot of cases. Some higher end on waterfront is part of it, but also in some existing neighborhoods, we're seeing lots that hadn't been developed prior, and existing neighborhoods are now having some houses go up on them. So it's really a mix across the city, but that's a very strong number and kind of indicative of the housing market that we're seeing all across the state. You can see the data for our fire and rescue, our EMS numbers. Again, from a little bit of a slowdown this spring, we've seen a rebound back to normal numbers as activity has picked back up at businesses and schools, and obviously tourists have been coming all the way along. Our welfare numbers under the public assistance data continue to be very low. Glenn and our welfare technician Kathy are doing a great job there, but there are a number of programs that are in place that supported people through this pandemic, from unemployment checks coming right away, stimulus dollars, some stays for evictions of housing or turn off of utilities that have been in place. So we continue to monitor that. We may see an uptick at some point, and please be reminded that we also have an application in regionally for a community development block grant for social service agencies that the council approved a few weeks back to send forward. So we are continuing to monitor this, but if there is a need, we're hoping that some of the funds that will be made available through that application will support. Under the police department, on the second page of the report, you can see number of motor vehicle stops is up significantly, and I know there's been an effort of the PD, and so if you compare it to where we were on the same month last year, it's almost double the number of motor vehicle stops. But it's not all about writing the tickets, it's about engaging, it's about giving warnings. You can see that even though we stopped almost twice as many vehicles, it was exactly the same number of summonses that were written. So it's just having the police have some visibility, connecting with motorists and making that contact, so to speak. Property tax collection, again, the due date was the 1st of July. You can see our collection rate mirrors with any of the prior 6 years before that. So again, we will continue to monitor later this year when the bills go out in November with a December due date to see how that trend continues or what it looks like. Motor vehicle registrations, again, as you recall, during the budget process, we made a slight reduction from what I had originally proposed with Glenn, just on the unknown of what was going to be happening with COVID, with people's ability to upgrade cars or purchase newer vehicles, trade in older vehicles. But you can see that we're on target at 25%, a little bit over that. And the dollar threshold compared to the same first quarter of last year, we're up almost $25,000 just in terms of dollars. The overtime report is there. Again, I will remind you that in some cases there will have been some reimbursements through FEMA or through the Gopher program that don't necessarily reflect here through the obvious of someone either being exposed or needing to quarantine or having tested or a family member. So some of those numbers will reflect in some of the overtime, but some of that reimbursement will show up elsewhere in our financials as we go through the year. So happy to take any questions if anybody has there. Not a whole lot new on page 4. It's no surprise that our recreation facility use requests are down this year. And again, that's for obvious reasons. The impact fees, again, this is fees collected to support various departments of the impact of new development in the community. We collect those fees once a certificate of occupancy is issued on those. So you can see the columns there and the balance in the various accounts. On page 6 of the report, boat taxes collection, again, in terms of dollars, is the strongest number that we've seen at this point through the fiscal year over the last 6 years. And then the EMS billing, it's a little sparse in September, but that was due to a maternity leave and a vacation. So it's just a timing issue of some of the bills not getting out in September, but we're caught up on that now. And those numbers will reflect once we do the report for you in at the next meeting when we do this. I also want to just share that numbers on the EMS collections, I think most of the council knows that we go out, we work with people. We know that sometimes can be a 4-month, 5-month lag time in getting bills paid through insurance companies or through private individuals. On the very last page of the report is actually the last fiscal year. I went back and looked at all of the numbers, and every month, and 10 out of the 12 months from last year still show payments increasing. In some cases, it's not a huge amount. Somebody might be on a $100 a month payment schedule, and it might take them 12 months to pay off a bill or something along those lines. But we actually saw increases in 10 out of the 12 months. So it's slow and steady. Separate from that, when accounts go delinquent, we go to a collection agency who works on a percentage basis, and we've collected almost $15,000, again, not reflected here, coming from a billing agency of that. I've got a couple more items that aren't part of this report, but I can certainly stop here and answer any questions at this point before I continue.
Councilor Hamel.
Yes, thank you, Scott. Under the pending grievance summary, the last one there, could you explain what that might be, please?
Yeah, so that was a situation, it's unique to COVID, where firefighters in this case showed up to work and fit for duty, ready to work. And for whatever reason, during the course of the day, there was an exposure or potential exposure that they then needed to go into quarantine on. It could have been dealing with the transport. It could have been coming to a member of the public. So the question really came around as to whether we should be charging them sick time if we are telling them, we as the city, the chief, telling them they needed to quarantine when they were physically fine and showed up for work that day, so to speak. So it's really, are we forcing somebody to use sick time when they are fit for duty, so to speak, and it's out of precaution and protocols and procedures that we are telling them to do that. So the fire chief held an initial hearing, denied it more on some technical matters, came to me, I held a hearing to it, and I actually agreed with that position that if somebody showed up, you know, in the protocols in the fire department right now, they show up and they do a temperature check. And if you're over a certain temperature, you're told to go home for the day. And then that is a sick day. But if somebody showed up and for reasons beyond their control, had to wait until the test result came back in. So through some of the, Glenn's got to help me here because there's so many pots of money for the reimbursement, but the Family
First.
The Family First Act, there's some funds if someone needs to either take care of a child because their school or daycare went away or has to quarantine or situations like that. So there's different ways that we can approach that. It's not a workers, in some cases it can go to workers' compensation. So we're putting all the pieces together and we're just trying to be fair with the employees. So I actually respond to them that I forget for not having in front of me, there was one section of their grievance that I did not agree with and denied, but restoring the sick days and at least making sure that paycheck wise, they were made whole, I did agree with. I responded to them somewhere back in the middle of maybe it was late September. They had 20 business days in which to respond. And I heard from them this afternoon that they accepted the outcome of my decision and are not taking it any further to arbitration. So this had already been printed, but I got the email today and that's what that was about. So
What was the roughly $1,400 cost there? What was that?
We want to go to our legal counsel on that, our labor attorney, to make sure, especially in this day and age with all of these different available pieces of money and how they apply and when you can use one or the other. We just wanted to make sure decisions we were making were sound along the way when we render a decision like this.
My other question is on the ambulance fee cost. I guess we budget roughly $1 million to support that part of the fire department.
We do.
And according to the latest figures, I believe this is last year, the total revenues came in at $839,619. So was there a variance on the cost? And if so, where did that money come from to finish that $1 million?
So with the special revenue account, there's expenses as well as revenue coming in. So we're in the process of working with our auditors right now, closing the book so I can get some better numbers to you in the coming weeks, but I can talk maybe to a 10,000 foot level of it tonight. Generally speaking, those are estimates. We went into this a year ago with not only operating the ambulance, but billing for it. And we made some general assumptions based on number of calls and our billing rate and our collection rate. Some of that was sidetracked this spring when, if you look at the calls in March, April, May, and June, basically dropped significantly from where they were earlier in the year. So that's, I don't want to say it's out of our control, but that's what was driving. We were doing fewer transports. People either weren't calling 911, weren't choosing to go to the hospital, even though it might have been an emergency, just not doing that. So that's out of our control. The flip side to that is we probably didn't use all of the materials and the supplies on the ambulance because we didn't make all those runs. We had that many fewer transports, so that many fewer IVs or linens or different things didn't get used and stuff. Outside of that number for the revenue, we also received in one of the COVID-related reimbursements for lost revenue was about $37,000 came in as a revenue makeup based on lost ambulance revenue. So that came in to be almost 4% of our prior year collection we were reimbursed. There's a new round that Councilor Lippman forwarded that we've applied for. We may or may not get something more from that because we already collected $37,000 in the first place, but Glenn put in the information and we submitted for it to see if there's additional revenue that could come. We believe it might be for some medical providers who maybe fell through the cracks the first time, but we're in the mix. We applied for it. Second, that's not included in that number is that almost $15,000 that I just mentioned that is coming from that third-party collection agency. And I would have to check with the chief because we are also doing in-house training refreshers for the EMT advanced, and don't hold me 100% to paramedic, but at least the EMT that we did. And if we held some of those classes pre-pandemic, which would have been from a year ago, July through February, there's revenue there that comes in as well that goes towards the EMS because it's those folks who are training in what we're certifying on it. And our employees get the benefit of getting the training with no cost because we've got folks on staff who can teach it and we don't have to send them somewhere else to go and do that. So are we going to hit the $1 million this year in revenue by the time everything plays out in the coming months, once we collect every dollar that we're going to? No, I also don't think we're going to hit that on the expense side either. A year ago at this time, even after we put away $50,000 towards an ambulance and did everything else, there was a surplus, which stays within the account. So there's some money in a rainy day account, if you will, so to speak.
Do we have an idea of what COVID has cost the city and what we've been reimbursed on that? I mean, I would say even across all departments.
The short answer is we do. So it's been everything from personal protection equipment to paying some new staff people. So this year we had ambassadors at the beach to help with crowd controls and limiting. We've had a greeter in City Hall. We've had plexiglass shields that go up. We've invested in IT for remote working from home from people and different laptops and everything that you see here. We've done additional cleanings. The election costs, but again, sometimes there's different silos of money that are coming for this. One of the things that happened with the CARES money that came through Gopher is partway through that process, they softened some of the restrictions and allowed it to be reimbursable for any public safety official. That could be police, fire, EMS, even public works if performing the public safety. Even if your money was already in the budget for those positions, and the softening was basically that the person had to at least be able to respond to COVID within their day-to-day work. It didn't have to be, they were 100% dedicated to COVID activities. So this is what Glenn and really all the department heads have done a great job in working through all of these regulations, all of these programs, so that we're taking advantage of everything. If you were to ask us what we had in direct cost right now for cleaning and the masks and the plexiglass and some extra positions, it's probably in the $50,000 range or less in direct. But then we get some of the situations like I spoke of, having to quarantine, and there's the overtime cost, and some of that money on overtime goes to a FEMA program. So, I mean, if you read the papers in the last day or two, I believe it was 2 officers in the Seacoast community tested positive and on a police department, and 16 officers went into quarantine. So that's a significant chunk of your force. And how are you backfilling those positions? So, to determine what is truly COVID and what is, and then the schools have their own numbers as well. So a lot of moving parts, but I can tell you from Chief Biotti as our emergency management director to Glenn Smith, coordinating everything on the finance end and staying on top of it. And all of our department heads, you really got a great team doing yeoman's effort on this.
So is there, go ahead.
I think we'll eventually get an accounting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was kind of getting to.
Yeah.
Can we get something at some point at the end of the year?
Yeah, we're going to tally what it would be. We may not take the time, and Glenn and I've had this conversation, we may not go back to every department and charge back reimbursements to various departments, because that's just going to be a lot of legwork and a lot of busy work to do that. Yeah. We will be able to tally down what came from the various programs, what collectively got reimbursed to general fund budgets, so that at the end of the year, if you say, hey, why is police over by $40,000 or why is fire over by $30,000? The answer will be yes, but collectively, here's unanticipated revenue that came in and backfilled those costs. So yes, we will be able to provide you with a good snapshot that that shows some of the bigger pieces without getting into the weeds with you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you, Scott.
All right, so I have a couple more items for you. So I did approve administratively a couple of 10 o'clock Sunday night loudspeakers for weddings at the Margate. They've had a number of people who didn't have weddings this year that were on a Saturday, and next year's Saturdays are already booked up. So those folks have moved it to a Sunday, and by our ordinance, loudspeakers can go to 10 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday night, but they have to stop at 9 o'clock Sunday through Thursday, and I didn't want any brides yelling at me, so I think there were 3 wedding dates that I administratively approved. They could go to 10 o'clock with their outdoor loudspeakers for that. Councilor Cheney had asked for updates on 3 items at our last meeting. The first one being the property that had a fire at the corner of Pickerel Pond Road and Parade Road. We have sent several letters, the last one going out fairly recently. They've all been ignored. Our next step is to turn those over to legal and start the process with the courts on that. The property on the corner of Roller Coaster and Parade Road. Look back at my notes. We went to court in September of 2019 seeking a preliminary injunction to at least stop the property owner there from bringing anything additional onto the property and into the eclectic pasture in the backyard, so you know what property I'm talking about if you didn't already. The judge granted that preliminary injunction. We've been monitoring it with pictures on a monthly basis. We were supposed to have a trial this spring when the courts closed. That got moved twice, and we are now scheduled for trial on November 6th. And I can get you the time if anyone was interested in going and attending that in person. The third item the Council Cheney requested was an update on the dive. We actually sent through myself and Dean Trefethen, our planning director, and Wes Anderson, Public Works Director, and Chief Biotti at the Fire Department, all coordinated and through our attorney sent a letter to the dive on a number of fronts of concerns that we've had over the past month or 2. We wanted to document it in writing. Some of them may have been corrected. Some may be a moot point because the season's over right now. But they were everything from signage being up on that dock saying no trespassing, which is still a public dock and they have a right to use it. There were I think there were 2 instances where there were propane tanks sitting on the dock that were unattended and not tethered that we put them on notice to. We are having a difference of opinion on whether or not they're what they refer to as commercial tenders, the smaller pontoon type boats that they use to support their business, have been docked there and overnight, and I don't want to say 24/7 because they leave to go get supplies and move trash from time to time, but for the most part, those boats have been tied up there, which in looking at the lease from our position was not part of that. A bigger concern is that one of the boats has been sitting there with trash that when they have full trash bags coming off the dive, they sit in a pontoon boat tied at the dock and are just visible there, which isn't a great visual for us to be having. I think there might have been another matter or 2 that escapes me at the moment, but and additionally, we asked them the 2 questions of how come they weren't following the business model they had in past years where the dive basically went out during the daytime and was only at the dock during inclement weather or in the evening hours, which we knew it was. The short answer was the COVID and the social distancing, and they didn't want to be a draw at the sandbars and have people congregating, was the response. The other question of where are they at with their DES application? I guess I'm going to answer this 2 ways. They don't have their application in, and I'm trying to think, we approved the final lease with them, I want to say sometime in the latter part of May, if memory serves me correct. Might have been early June, but somewhere in that ballpark. More recently, I have been working with an attorney with the firm who represents them, not their primary attorney, on looking to see if the city and the dive want to submit a joint application for the modification of the dock spaces around that boat infrastructure grant that I spoke to you of and that we put in our application for in the 1st or 2nd week of July. But that wasn't even on our radar when they had their approvals, and here we are in October, and there's some work being done to see if it makes sense to submit one application to DES for dock construction in some cases, in one case, and reconfiguration in the other space. The other item that is still out there is the sewer hookup. My understanding is that the dive really has 2 options to hook into sanitary sewer. One would be to go in off of the dock area and go underneath the railroad and connect into Lakeside Avenue somewhere. I think they would get significant pushback from Department of Transportation and the rail division of boring under the tracks to run a sewer line. The other option is to connect into the bathhouse at Weir's Beach. And while we haven't said no to that, we have said strongly, we need to know what's there, how much material you would be pumping in there, what that does to our existing infrastructure, and can our existing infrastructure handle that, and who is going to pay, if needed, for any upgrades to either update a system or handle capacity. So there is no clear path at this point that's been determined on a sewer connection. So there's been some bumps. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's been some bumps. There was a response that came back from their attorney. We had asked when we sent our letter to respond within 5 days. It did come in very late this afternoon. I skimmed it. I was getting ready to finish up and grab a bite and come here. So I haven't discussed it with our legal counsel yet. Haven't gone through it, but they did respond with quite a lengthy response that I will work with our team and see what the next steps might be and keep you informed.
Thank you.
So with that, I can stop and take questions on any of those or anything else.
Question on the dive, and I've spoken to you about this before. Is there anything in there that says they can or can't put those stools down and the stairway down into the water and possibly get people swimming over from the beach?
We certainly are not going to allow people to swim over from the beach, and I'm not sure if it's happened. It's been the rare exception, not the norm. If someone wants to come in on a boat and put themselves down on a seat that sits in the water, I guess I don't see the harm of that, as long as they're not swimming over from the beach. That's someone's choice who came, took a boat trip to the dock and wanted to sit and have lunch on it. I know I'm going on way longer than I was planning to tonight, but something interesting has come up from my counterpart in the town of Sunapee, where they were having some issues with electricity to docks somehow entering the water. And I'm like the worst electrician guy there is, so I'm not getting any of this lingo right, but energizing the water in areas of docks where electricity is brought down to, but something about it's not a neutral end or whatever. So the town manager up there, Donna Nashawati, good friend, she called me and said, hey, if it's happening up here, you guys have to be seeing it down there. And I checked with Public Works and Fire Chief, and other than, and I'm not minimizing this, I believe there was a dog that was electrocuted down off in Lakeport a couple of years ago. But that was the only thing and nothing recent. So I responded back, and then Donna forwarded me a whole bunch of emails that included some folks in her town and also a state electrical inspector about some things they found with Eversource on how power is coming into a dead end street and what's happening when it's dead ending into whatever. And then Wes even, I shared it with our team, and Wes even found something that, I don't want to say it's a state law. Something from the state came out with a posted sign that said, no swimming in this area because of electrical, whatever. And it's electricity on a dock. So still a lot of work to be done on it. We did forward that to the dive just so that they can do their due diligence and research on that as well. We haven't had any problems here. We haven't had one issue with that, but Sunapee was having several issues.
So they got electricity down here now on the dock? Or they they're not using generators?
No, they've got electricity down there.
So does it dive plug into juice there in the dock?
They ran their own service out of the, with permission and everything, and with licensed electricians out of the, one of the outbuildings up by the Mount Washington area and stuff, and ran power.
One incident would be horrific.
This is nothing truly dive related. They've done nothing wrong on the electrical. So the question came, should someone be sitting in the water around electricity? And I just wanted to share that this is something brand new that we haven't had an issue, but I think there's enough talking and looking at it at the state level and with Eversource that, it could just be something unique to, a grid that was constructed in a certain area, but people are taking a look at it right now, and just in common sense says that in this day and age, there's a lot more electricity down at the water's edge than there was 30 or 40 years ago.
Scott, would it be possible for you to get us some sort of synopsis that might be out there, either through Eversource or through the state, about this is a new issue for me and I don't quite understand it.
Yeah, I will forward you some emails. I'll put something together.
If you would, I think that would be, I would appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is there a power source meter that goes down to the dock?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I'm good.
Good. You catch your breath. All right, thank you. Thank you, Scott.
I've got 8 or 10 questions.
Why don't you reserve your time, you can ask me a little later on, okay? All right, moving on to number 20 in our agenda, which is new business. Under 28, proposed changes to the city's solid waste ordinances. You may be back on this one, Scott, just to review this just a bit. Otherwise, I would read the entire thing and you might be able to do a more efficient job. So why don't you take it from here?
Okay, so this was one of the 2 items that went to the Public Works Committee that Councilor Haynes chaired, and they reviewed. So the 2, one you're voting on later tonight with the cuts into the pavement and the improved repair for cuts into new pavement. This was one that we brought along at the same time, mostly dealing with housekeeping changes in our solid waste ordinance. So some of the things, we removed a couple of dates of things of when programs started that were no longer relevant. We removed the 3 or 4 remote recycling locations that were referenced there because those aren't there anymore. We used to collect ash in ash cans, and that's not something we do. We're not picking up things in bundles, so you can't bundle and leave it out there. So most of these, as you see them in the strike version, are really housekeeping. One new one that we've heard from a few people when the city was enforcing regulations that have been on the books since 2013 about the number of trash barrels that you can have out and the size for a single family residence, was that we heard from some people that said, I can't live with just 2 trash barrels, even though I can get unlimited recycling. And I know there was concern from the council about, not wanting to take those limits away because solid waste costs are rapidly increasing and we're trying to do everything we can. So a very good compromise that actually Councilor Felch brought up, and we think is staff that could work and is included in here. And again, all you're doing tonight is moving this to a public hearing, but it's basically allowing someone to buy a sticker same way they would for a bulky item. So if you're getting rid of a couch or a mattress, you can buy the $6 sticker and put it on your item on your curb day, and it gets picked up on your regular trash day. This would be a $3 sticker sold in packs of 5 for $15, I think it says. And if you had a 3rd trash can, you could put a sticker on it. So you're basically paying $3 to get that extra trash barrel picked up. So for those who needed it, we're hoping that is someone that's not doing it every single week of the year. And we're certainly not going to have it be that somebody can get 8 barrels out there, or a commercial establishment all of a sudden wants to do away with their dumpster. And now you've got 8 barrels out there, each one with a sticker on each week. But I get it. And we try to be flexible around the holidays, 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas time, when people may have, additional solid waste going out. But these are for people who said, I can't ever make it with 2 barrels. I don't want to have to throw my trash in the car and drive it over to the transfer station. I don't mind paying a little bit. So what we're basically saying is, 2 barrels, up to 2 barrels is part of, your taxes and everything that you're entitled to. And beyond there is kind of a user fee if you have an extra barrel. Since we're already selling the bulky item stickers, we thought selling these in packs of 5 for $15 simplified it. We didn't have to do a transaction at the counter for something as small as $3, but we thought it made sense as an option, and letting residents know that we heard this and we think this is a common sense solution. So that's other than some of the housekeeping things I mentioned, that's one of the major changes to that, is to have an extra container sticker.
Terrific, thank you very much. So the formal report has been submitted by Wes Anderson, Director of Public Works, and staff recommendation is the City Council approve the proposed changes to the city's solid waste ordinance. So we'll be looking at 3 motions here. The first one is be looking for a motion to move to waive the reading of these ordinances in their entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Any further discussion?
Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Second motion to be looking for is to move a first reading of ordinances 2020-194, refuse and household waste collection, and ordinance 194-24, dump and disposal fees. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Hamel. Further discussion? Seeing none, and call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, I'll be looking to a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on October 26, 2020, during the regular council meeting regarding the proposed changes to Chapter 194, solid waste, Article 1, refuse and household waste collection, and Article 3, dump and disposal fees, to gather public input prior to adoption. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Thank you, Scott and councilors. So moving along to 20B, which is the first reading of Resolution 2020-17 relative to the Lakeport Area Drainage Roadway and Sidewalk Upgrade Bond. The first reading of Resolution 2020-17 relative to authorizing the city manager to take any actions necessary to issue bonds for Lakeport Area Drainage Roadway and Sidewalk Upgrade Project in the amount of $1,600,000, and to schedule a public hearing and second reading on October 26, 2020 during the regular city council meeting. The proposed Lakeport Area Drainage Roadway and Sidewalk Upgrade Bond provides the funding for the reconstruction of Mechanic Street, Clinton Street South to Union Ave, Franklin Street, Washington Street to School Street, and Elm Street Bridge over the Winnipesaukee River to Hickory Stick Lane, to include sidewalks and drainage. The road improvements will occur in conjunction with the water and sewer main replacement project. The Sewer Enterprise Fund is funding the improvements to the sewer system and will share in the cost of the roadway project on Elm Street. Laconia Water Department is funding the improvements to its system. The sewer system is over 100 years old in the areas, and due to its condition, it cannot be repaired. Thus, it is critical that sewer mains be replaced to minimize impacts to Lakeport residents. Certainly, low interest rates provide an opportunity to bond these projects and provide complete street reconstruction, drain, sidewalk, and roadway. Public Works plan is to use funds from the annual street repairs CIP to make the bond payments. This concept, even with making the bond payments from the program, will result in more funds available to pave streets that require less costly repairs. This will ultimately increase the miles of streets paved on a yearly basis. The proposal was developed in coordination with the city's finance director. Exact fiscal impact is conditional on interest rates at the date of issuance. Finance intends to advertise the bond in early 2021 so that funds are available in March of 2021. Public Works anticipates the interest rates will not exceed 2.75%. Public Works recommends that the City Council approve the resolution authorizing a 10-year bond for capital projects in the amount of $1.6 million. This report was submitted by Krista Larson, Assistant Public Works Director. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if the council is aware, you authorized us to apply for a low interest loan on the sewer project several months back through a state program. Water department also has to do significant work, and the next item is a water bonding approach. And since we're doing significant work with water and sewer and getting a good chunk of roadage done, it really makes sense to do the right repair rather than going in and digging up for water and sewer and then not having enough funds to do that. So a number of streets will be done with starting this fall with the sewer work, I believe, going in first. With a low interest rate environment, we're really going to get a big bang for our buck, and we're using existing street dollars that were already budgeted to cover the expense. So there's no additional cost, but we think this would get a good area, a good amount of Lakeport done completely with the drainage issues and the sidewalk issues, especially on Elm Street and some of the other streets that are listed. So that's why these are coming. And when you do get to the water one, Ben Crawford, our water superintendent, is patiently been online with us tonight if we have any questions for Ben as well.
Thank you.
So all those would be happening tonight with your consensus is to move these both to public hearings in 2 weeks.
Perfect. Any questions from councilors prior to these motions? Seeing none, the first motion that we'd be looking for is a move to waive a reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those, I'll call the vote. Seeing all those in favor, raise your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Next, we'll be looking for a move a first reading of resolution 2020-17, a resolution relative to authorizing the city manager to take any actions necessary to issue bonds for lake port area drainage, roadway and sidewalk upgrade project in the amount of $1.6 million. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand, please. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, I'm looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on October 26, 2020 during the regular council meeting relative to resolution 2020-17 to gather public input prior to adoption. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, I call the vote on this matter. All those in favor, raise your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you. Moving along to item perhaps give us a bit of an overview on this first reading.
This is Ben Crawford here. I don't know if you guys are able to hear me now. I was muted there for a second.
Very well. Go right ahead. We can hear you really well.
Okay, so if you want me to just kind of go through the project and what we're looking for.
Yes, please.
All right. So as Scott mentioned, we're working in conjunction with DPW in the Lakeport area. Our focus is on, excuse me, Clinton Street, Prospect Street, Mechanic Street from Clinton to Union. And then we are also doing a cross-country water line from the intersection of Clinton and Prospect Street, the top of the hill, that goes from there up to our water tanks. That's the driving force behind our work is, as some of you may know, that we have a 20-inch water main that comes from the tank to that position in the Clinton and Prospect intersection. That is the only line that feeds the city, all of the city, everything from the Weirs down to Long Bay, down to the south end, everything comes through that one line. So we're looking to install a redundant line, an additional line, approximately 50 to 75 feet off of that line in that same cross-country pattern to give us, a fail-safe. Both lines will be active at all times, but if one of them does have an issue, we can simply turn some valves and continue to feed the city while we repair the other line. Where it stands now, if that line ever had any issues at this point, we would be, on our back feet scrambling to get everything done and put back together so we could continue. That line is a 1966 cast iron main from the hill to the intersection, from the tanks to the intersection. So it's not old by our standards. I mean, we've replaced lines when they're 75 years or better old generally, but just being the timing of it all with DPW being in that area, looking to get that done, as well as the 16-inch mains on Clinton and Prospect, again, are 1966. They've been in there for 45 years or so at this point. And given the grade of those roads and how narrow they are with the other work going on subterraneously, they're going to be we're gonna want to replace that line anyway, and those will be replacements as opposed to additional lines. Will be replaced with a new ductile iron. And then when we get to Mechanic Street, we're looking to replace that because that's a line from 1930. So that's in our range of normal replacement when the road gets done. We're 90 years old at this point, so that one's due to be replaced anyway. We're looking for a bond of $1.8 million. Our estimated cost from the engineer at this point is 1.725. So that gives us a little extra in there as far as work to be done that the waterworks will have to provide as far as pressure testing, chlorination, and also any incidentals or paving after the fact. So we'll have a little wiggle room in there for that. But that's where we came up with the 1.8 number that is based off a probable cost estimate from CDM Smith, the engineer on the project. With that, if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Ben, thank you very much. How long do you expect this project to last?
We are hoping to get it out to bid in the next couple of weeks here and have the project start as early as mid to late November. That cross-country work can be done, some of it in the winter time where there's no traffic issues. We're not getting into asphalt at all, so we don't have to worry about repaving. It can just be simply put back to the ground it was. But the whole project we're looking to be approximately a year from now, be wrapped up at the end of next year's paving season. So we would get as much done as we can in the winter time here, kind of take a break until the springtime when we can get into the roads, and then in conjunction with Public Works do Clinton, Prospect, and Mechanic.
Okay. Well, any questions from councilors of Ben Crawford? Thanks again, Ben. Anyway, this is the fiscal impact of this project. It indicates that the exact fiscal impact is conditional on interest rates at the date of issuance. Estimated interest costs are estimated to total approximately $560,000 over the term of a 20-year bond. The city manager and the board of water commissioners recommend approving this resolution authorizing bonds for the water projects in the Lakeport area in the amount of $1.8 million. This report was submitted by Glenn Smith, the finance director. So the first thing we'll be looking for here is a move to waive the reading of this resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Further discussion? Seeing none, I call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hands, please. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Secondly, looking for a motion to move the first reading of Resolution 2020-18, a resolution relative to authorizing the city manager and the Board of Water Commissioners to bond water projects in the Lakeport area in the amount of $1.8 million. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Susie. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. See 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, be looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on October 26, 2020, during the regular council meeting relative to resolution 2020-18 to gather public input prior to adoption. So made by Councilor Phelps, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hands. Being at 6 in favor, that motion passes. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you for your assistance and your oversight in the work in the city.
Thank you very much.
Moving along to number 20D, which is a request to support legislation that will create a new Winnipesaukee River Basin Program Commission. I forget, Scott, did we talk about this? I know you and I talked about it, but we talk about it at a meeting.
Yes, I gave that
Yeah.
down at the last meeting, when I sent the council links of the some language we've been working on with the attorney, as well as a link to the language of the RSA that forms the Fishing Game Commission.
Thank you. If I had read the first sentence here in the discussion of the last council meeting, it was presented that the local communities would like to create this. Yes. Thank you. We have the report submitted by Scott Meyer, City Manager, in front of us. So I'd be looking for a motion at this point to to move to support proposed legislation that would create a new Winnipesaukee River Basin Program Commission. So made by Councilor Hamel, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Further discussion on this motion. Councilor Lippman.
Scott, if I could.
Yeah, of course.
In terms of, as we know with legislation, it can take a circuitous and potentially it can mutate. So I guess in terms, I think what we're voting on here is to support initiating a legislative service request to get a bill introduced. If that bill mutates to something that we don't like, we have a chance to reverse our position on that.
We can pivot, and this will also be contingent on probably a strong majority of the communities in the program also supporting it. A number have already, but obviously if it was a split 50-50, we would move forward unless we had a very strong majority that was looking to get behind us. But yes, we will be monitoring it closely. We're trying to work with the senator to get the LSR in and get the process rolling for January.
So this is like an initial vote on.
This is saying Laconia is in support of taking the next step and getting an LSR in, legislative service request, which is a placeholder for a bill to be developed. And then it would be introduced in January and start the process. But yes, if this got amended and merged with another bill or an unfriendly something, we will certainly monitor and stay on top of this.
Councilor Susie.
Is there opposition that you know of?
I don't know how to call it opposition. I think in particular, maybe one or two of the very small communities, and I'll refer to Tilton and Northfield, who don't have a large portion of their community on the sanitary sewer system. They get a very small amount, and they've got board of sewer commissioners. I think there's a little concern that they just want to understand fully what potentially they're getting into. I think for most of the larger communities, we're paying the lion's share of this, and our residents are as ratepayers of the sewer system. We would like to have more input at the local level about our dollars and how they're spent.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Seeing 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you. Moving along, number 21, which is unfinished business. 21A will be Colonial Theater Management. We'll be working on that at the next meeting, not this evening. We'll move along to 21B, which is a further discussion regarding the funding for the approved skate park at O-Pee-Chee Park. Obviously, some great progress has been made here, so I don't know if we would like to have Amy Lovisek cover this for us. Sure. Or Scott, would you like to keep speaking?
No, my water bottle's almost empty. The water bubblers in the building that are operating because of COVID, so no.
Welcome, Amy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sure you read it in your staff report, but after you generously gave the skate park $100,000 to start phase 1, we were able to guarantee the 170 that we had talked about. So Scott and I were looking for ways of funding the extra 70,000. We did find 2 accounts that are under the Parks Department. One is user fees, which is maintained basically through the commission. So anyone who looks to use our facilities, potentially, for instance, if they're non-residents and they want to have a wedding, it's $100. There's special event fees, their non-resident user fees, there's tournament fees, that type of thing is what goes into that account. I believe currently it has about $56,000 in it, and I'm looking to use 35 of that. I've gotten the commission's approval for that. So there's the 35. The other 35 we are looking to take from the Parks Co-op account, which is a separate account that we use specifically for the O-Pee-Chee Day Camp. And what we would do is, because it's at O-Pee-Chee Park, the O-Pee-Chee Day Camp can use it. It makes perfect sense. So I believe there's 30 or 54,000 in there in that account. So we're not hurting those accounts tremendously, and we will still be in a good position with them. items that we typically buy with the user fees. For the most part, it's flowers at Rotary Park. But we have purchased a lacrosse net. Potentially it's going back into the fields, it's bleachers, it's that type of a thing. But those are two areas that we were able to find the money. But I just wanted to let you know, and I believe in your packet you have a copy of what it looks like, what the actual skate park looks like, which I think you will be pleased with. It does not include the fencing or lighting or benches or landscaping. Those are going to be add-ons if that's what we're looking for, because there's the potential of not having a fence and not having lighting, if that's what people so choose.
Amy, thank you. Thank you very much. So by doing phase 1 and phase 2 at the same time, just to reiterate, it appears there's a savings of $40,000 to $50,000 to the city to do this all at once. Okay. So really our goal was to come up with your goal was to come up with another $70,000 so we can take advantage of the savings, do this all at once. Is there written intent on any of these accounts as to how the funds that are in those accounts may be used?
So there's written intent for the user fee, that the commission has control over it, and that it needs to be used for things in the parks. And as far as the co-op account goes, I'm not sure if there is or not. I'd have to look at that. But it's mostly for, it's money brought in by registration fees for day camp, and the day camp itself is sufficiently funded through that. And we have that buffer of $54,000 in that account. And each year the amount goes up a couple $1,000s. Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, each of these accounts will still have approximately $19,000 to $20,000 balance. Correct. In each account. Okay. So I guess my question might be to you on the second account, on the co-op account, if you could perhaps provide that to Scott, if you find the language associated with how the funds should be spent or are allowed to be spent. I think that would be helpful. Just to make sure they're not misusing a fund that was intended to be used in a different way. Do you have any sense, again, and you may have mentioned this at the last meeting, any sense of the estimate to do the complete landscaping with the lights and the fence? So I wasn't able to get fencing, unfortunately. My contractor didn't get back to me. However, I did get a lighting cost. And the lighting cost, I know it's here somewhere because everything else is. I got it from Hutchins Electric, who does our electrical, and it's about $2,000 just to do electrical. And what we would be doing is taking it off of the existing building there, the track building. And we would actually have it on not a timer, but I don't know if you remember back in the day when you played tennis, you could crank the dial and you got about a half hour out of it. And that way it's not on when it's not needed. Mm-hmm. So that's what we had asked for, which brought down the amount quite a bit, and it'll save us quite a bit on energy as well because we're not using power when we don't need to. And then we'd have a complete shut off time. You couldn't do it all night long.
So the $2,000 estimate you received from Hutchins Electric, what does that include? Just running a line there? That is 2 lights, one near the building itself and one near the road, one angled at from each side. So it's just those 2 lights and a pole. And the construction company that's doing this work, do they make a recommendation as to what adequate lighting looks like at a skate park this size? They absolutely would do that for us. I have not asked them. They would. I have not asked them for that, but I can do that absolutely for tomorrow. So, it would seem to me that if the total cost to put lights at the skate park is $2,000. It seems like which seems like a really great idea in light of the fact that people might be out there using it in the dark, and I think it would be wise to have this illuminated with a hard shut-off time, of course, in the evening, at night. It seems like a small dollar amount to put the lights in, and to just might seem like good sense, just my suggestion. But
I would agree with that, but I would like to see the group come up with some of that
okay.
as well. I think that it's important that they feel as though they've contributed.
Absolutely, sure.
It's just an idea.
And is there any chance to get that done in fairly short order? I guess that would be my follow-up question, so you could get the lighting in there.
That I don't know.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Any questions from counselors? Counselor Susie, I saw you had your hand raised.
I was just wondering if 2 lights is enough. I'm trying to light up that whole area. $2,000, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing that up. It seems like not much money. And I'm wondering also, Scott, if that's something we should have either Public Works or somebody else, maybe the Parks Department itself does it, okay? Make sure we do have enough lighting there. I mean, and the idea of having a switch, turning it on and leaving that for a half hour, I mean, how do you do the hard shut off?
I think we would want the experts to have somebody who does this as a living look at it and say, here's what the appropriate lighting is. So we can do a peer verification with the skate construction company just to say, you know, what their thought is on it. And the shut off, like Amy said, is no different than what they did on tennis courts for years. You turn it on when you want the lights to come on, and at a certain time of night, it doesn't go on anymore, even if you turn the switch. So if we pick 9 o'clock at night for, you know, when it becomes dark or whatever time makes sense, that's when the lights don't go on anymore. So it's worked well in parks for years. When there's someone there to play tennis, they flip the lights on. You know, they don't run all night when no one's playing. Same thing with the skate park.
Counselor Lippman.
I guess I'd like to have someone expert look at it because it's a little different. The light goes off when you're hitting a tennis ball versus if you're doing a flip on concrete.
We'll give a little warning signal or something.
Fair enough. But I do like the idea of them having a little skin in the game and trying to raise this money. And it certainly sounds like it would be achievable. So I much prefer.
And if we can, since Councilor Hamill likes to be the first to do things like he was on the rail bikes, maybe we need to have him do the first half pipe or something there or whatever and stuff. Sure. That'd be a good photo.
I want us all there when that happens.
Maybe that can be part of the motion.
Any further questions before we move? Yes, Councilor Haynes.
Mr. Mayor, I just wouldn't, I'm totally for the project, but I just don't like to leave it open-ended. You know, if we're gonna do the lights, if we're gonna do the fence, if we're gonna do the landscaping, let's find out what this is gonna cost.
So I think to be fair, some of the questions where we are going into a new location, what's the impact for the neighborhood, right out of the gate, you know, do we want lights there or not? Maybe that's a different discussion. It seems to be that, you know, you do want them, but again, it's something new that's going to be in that park. The fence, there are plenty of skate parks that don't have any fences to them if they're going off into grass areas. We certainly would want one coming out onto North Main Street, so someone's not coming off that end and going into the road. But fences aren't really a requirement unless you're protecting someone from a hard object type of thing. So if they're going into grassy areas off the edge, it may not be. So I think those are the things that, as you're building it, you look at it, you know, we're not compromising anything by doing them afterwards, and they're relatively small dollars. The $170,000 is the big money.
I think Councilor Haynes, though, you're making a good point, though, in terms of just, we need to have an absolute budget for what we're going into, or it just keeps on creeping. And I think that's
right. So this is the 170. And then again, I think we work with the user group. What are they doing? I think the Parks Commission has a role in this to say what they'd like to see and let them develop the next frame of what it looks like.
One last question.
Absolutely, Councilor Susie.
The curveball, I'm afraid, and I'm just wondering, does ADA involve itself in this?
It would be ADA compliant.
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure that's
Absolutely. Good question.
All right. Thank you. I think we can move on to a proposed motion at this point. We're looking for a motion to move to authorize the city manager to sign the change order for full construction of the concrete skate park utilizing the funds listed above. Councilor Felch. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Cheney. Further discussion on this motion?
So just want to make sure that we've got a project definition so that if we're coming back to do other things, it's a different project as opposed to, I'm with Councilor Haynes about just project creep. I just want to make sure that we're not getting into a project creep situation. So let's define what we're doing now, and that's what we're doing. And if we're going to do other things, we come back and
We will bring anything to you regarding what the final design is for plans, lighting, fence lighting, that type of stuff. We will bring that back as a complete package.
But I guess what we're saying is tonight we're approving the 170 to complete that. We're not making a commitment to anything else at this point.
That's my understanding.
Yes,
I agree with Mark also on this. I think we should come up with a price for the fencing and the lights, and that way there they can let that group know this is what it's going to cost. So if you want it, go raise it or whatever. But I think we should have a definite price of what the fence, once we decide what it's going to be, of what that fencing lighting would cost.
And the company that's constructing the park would be installing the fencing and lighting anyway, two different. So we will get with that group and formation and identify, and I like the way Amy said it, they should have some skin in the game.
But, I would think the people designing and building this thing would have a good idea of how much light you're gonna need. Because if you have lights on both ends, they're gonna make shadows in the middle.
We'll run by what Hutchins proposed as a peer review with them and get their input on it as well.
Thank you, Councilor Ham. Seeing no further questions or discussion, call the vote. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Seeing 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you, councilors. Thank you, Amy. Moving along to 21C, which is our third readings of ordinance 201-15 excavations and ordinance 201-16 driveway paving and digging permits. As we recall, this is something we discussed previously as far as what the city is able to charge when excavation is tearing up paved and unpaved areas of city roadways. Is that correct? And sidewalks.
It is, and this specifically is dealing with cuts into new pavement and the more enhanced repair that has to be completed. So this was on your agenda a few weeks back. It went to Public Works Committee, the Councilor Haynes, and I think he reported out last meeting that, or 2 meetings ago, that they recommended move forward. We had the public hearing on it earlier tonight, and again, this has been tested.
(201-16) driveway paving and digging permits. So made by Councilor Phelps, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd call the vote. All of those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. I see 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Moving along to the third and final. We're looking for a motion to approve ordinance 201-15 excavations and ordinance 201-16 driveway paving and digging permits. So made by Councilor Haynes, seconded by Councilor Susi. Further discussion? Councilor Ham.
Thank you. I probably should have been more involved in reading a lot of this stuff, especially from the committee, but I guess my question, Scott, is contractors involved with this obviously be like replacing gas lines to a house or water to a house or cable, gas and all that kind of stuff in our streets, is that correct?
Or it could be just utility working in the street, doesn't have to be a cut to a house.
So does that
necessarily.
mean our current contractors putting in water lines or sewer lines or whatever, that includes him?
Well, hopefully it wouldn't be happening, because anytime we do a street paving, we work with all of our local contractors, gas, electric, cable, and obviously we operate water and sewer in the community. So there's regular meetings and everyone knows what streets are getting worked on. So if there's any planned work, it's all done in conjunction with any work we're doing already, and then these fees don't come into play. As if somebody didn't take advantage of that opportunity and 2 years later wanted to cut into a newly paved road because they needed to upgrade some gas infrastructure or something that was in the road, this is going to require them to put a more enhanced repair job to it, patching job to it, which protects the investment that the city's made in reconstructing that road in the first place. And there could be a situation where it's an emergency and someone didn't plan for it and a sewer line went. You can't foresee those. So it could be a situation like that, but anything planned with any of our utilities, they are informed when we're in a road and they know when their opportunity to go in and do something at minimal cost to them is.
Okay. I'll vote for this, but the part that bothers me is all the extra charges are going to end up back at the property owner, the consumer, gas or electric or, cable, phone, whatever, because the company's going to pass this on anyway. I think part of the problem is we should have been doing this right along is putting the contractor's feet to the fire to do a proper job as far as, pressing the road so that their patch doesn't sink and all that kind of stuff. We should have been doing this right along. So now we're going to charge them for this, and then now all this money is going to revert back to the consumer anyway. I just think that we're looking to charge somebody an extra fee that's going to end up back at the person that's paying for it anyway. And that should have been the city's job to begin with, is to make sure all these repairs were done properly and that the compaction was proper and that the asphalt was proper. So,
Councilor, I think we try to do that every day in every job that we do. And sometimes we fall short on it, but I think more often than not, we get it right. This is strictly on pavement that is brand new or relatively brand new. It's not on every cut. And again, our staff does a great job in coordinating with every utility company. Court Street, as an example, there should be no planned schedule utility upgrades from anybody on Court Street for years to come, because it was a complete street repair and everybody was on the same page. So this really protects our investment in people cutting into new pavement, basically.
Councilor Linden, I think what you're also saying though is with respect to the pavement that's not new, that just a higher vigilance with respect to making sure that the repairs that are made, as talked about,
so,
we can improve upon that, we will.
Absolutely.
I think the part that's kind of discouraging is that, we do brand new jobs, we pay a lot of money for it, and then we go back within a year or two to fix what's already been fixed. And the Weirs is a perfect example of that. It's about 2 years into it, you got to go back there and fix drainage surfaces and stuff. Bricks sinking out of sight. I know we've put on people to kind of watch more, but that isn't the first case. I mean, Warren Street was just done a few years ago, and within 2 years, they had to go back and fix structures that were sinking. So.
Who goes back to fix it, Councilman?
Public Works. I mean, sometimes they get reimbursed. I don't know. I hope they do.
I think they're dealing with two different things, though, right? This is if cutting into new pavement, that is, I think, the quality of our clerking of the works of the project to begin with, right? I mean, I agree with you. Both things need to be addressed. All three things need to be addressed.
And for the last 2 years, we have had a inspector on it, all key points for all of our major projects. We've heard that loud and clear, and we've made that happen. This is truly for cuts into new pavement to give us a better fix so that the investment that was made, we get the useful life out of.
Okay, so,
Councilor
so
Susan.
for example, we just approved a couple of bonds to take care of big Lakewood area.
Mhm.
Okay, so all the utility companies and all these other people are gonna be notified, if you wanna get in there, you get in there now, you're gonna pay later.
Absolutely. Or we've got a moratorium. They can't go in there for 5 years after we pave something. And if there's
Wait,
an,
if they say you can't go in there for 5 years and pay something, the person who hurt the most of the household.
well, but again, you know, if there's an emergency, if a sewer line breaks or a gas line ruptures or a water line, you know, ruptures for whatever reason, of course, in an emergency, you're going to go in and do the cut. We're not going to say no. But, you know, there was a situation on Union Ave years ago when the area, a certain area was done, and customers were notified that if you want to hook up into gas now's the time to do it. And 2 years later, somebody wanted to cut into the road just to hook up to gas because oil got expensive for them. That's not an emergency, but everybody was noticed and had an opportunity. So we work with everybody from Consolidated Communications, Eversource, Atlantic Broadband, Comcast now, Liberty Utilities for the gas, and obviously our own water and sewer. Everybody knows when we're going into a street for planned improvements, and they have an opportunity to go in and do that at that time. And knowing that there's a moratorium on, you know, if you just want to come and do an upgrade and it's not an emergency, you're not cutting into a brand new street. You had your opportunity. You need to wait until the 5-year window is up. So it's protecting our assets.
I look at that area, the streets narrow, right, and they get all torn up all over the place. I think it's a good thing to do it. I just don't want to see it happen again.
No.
Showing thereafter.
You know, we can't predict emergencies. I mean, someone's sewer hookup from the house to the street could go at any time. I mean, you don't know that. I know in my neighborhood when they did Holman Street, one of the local contractors, you know, mailed out information and said, hey, if you want us to run a new service from your house to the street because your neighborhood's 50 years old, now's the time to do it. So there are even private companies that aren't the utilities that come in and do mailings and target people because, again, if the street had just gotten done and my sewer hookup failed, that's on me. That had nothing to do with the project. So, you know, if I'm cutting into a street, that's you know, unforeseen occurrence. But we work with all the utility companies. Everybody knows when we're going into a street and where their opportunities are.
Do we send a notice out to the homeowners too that we're gonna be doing something in the streets?
On the bigger projects, we hold community meetings on something smaller and less impactful, but I can tell you.
I'm thinking about whether, you know, the Lakewood area we're talking about.
Yeah, that'll be a big enough project and we'll get a timeline in. I think the water work that Ben was talking about this winter is gonna go across the country. That's not gonna be impacting any streets. But yes, as we get into major projects, yes, we notify people and try to give them a time frame for when I'm gonna be there and what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Susan. So seeing no further discussion, call a vote on this motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. 6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you, councilors. Moving along to item number 22, which is council comments. Council Lippman.
Just wanted to appreciate the cleanup around the entrance of the Laconia sign that I raised last time and planting some mums there, make it look a little bit better. We can appreciate that.
And we will be getting permanent landscaping there this spring.
Thank you.
Council Cheney.
I was going to ask if the manager could look into the costs associated with continuing Zoom after COVID goes away. The thought that citizens could participate. I mean, I know they can watch on TV, but to be able to participate without coming to the meetings, and for some of the senior citizens, I wouldn't understand this, but I'm sure some of the senior citizens would appreciate not having to climb the stairs or come to the meetings and be able to participate. So if you could just give us some idea of what it might cost us to continue to do this when COVID is over.
Yeah, we'd be happy to. I know we did it out of the council chambers when we had limited attendance there, so it certainly can work with having the meeting in person and do it just like we are tonight. The challenge in the chambers was also going out on YouTube, live streaming, and then going out on the local public access channel in 24, there was too much happening in the feedback. So at that point, we felt that Zoom was more important. So I'm sure there's got to be a fix somewhere in order to get all of those that I've just listed. How expensive of a fix is to get them all, I'll let you know.
Any other council comments? Seeing none, I'd like to declare the city council meeting adjourned at 9:14 PM.